Welcome. My name is Marilyn Reisbaum. I'm happy to welcome you here this evening for this Harry Spindel Memorial Lectureship, which was established in 1977 by former trustee Rosalind Spindel Bernstein and her late husband Sumner Bernstein. They named the lecture in honor of Roz's father. The Spindel Lectureship brings accomplished thinkers, writers, artists, and scholars to campus to deliver talks on topics in Judaic studies or contemporary Jewish affairs. And more in a moment about tonight's speaker. In its 40-year history, the Spindel Lecture Series has touched on issues involving politics, history, music, poetry, cinema, philosophy, literature, feminism, multiculturalism, an enormous range of topical discussions through a Judaic lens. The first Spindel lecturer in 1977 was the eminent scholar and author, Holocaust historian, Lucy Davidovich. Others have included Wolf Blitzer in 1989, just before going to become the news anchor at CNN, Art Spiegelman, Ruth Messenger, Barney Frank, and quite recently, Jonathan Safran Foer, among many other distinguished speakers. We regret that the Bernstein family were unable to attend this evening. I'm happy to introduce tonight's speaker, Adi Nes. Let me begin by saying that we are fortunate to have two opportunities to hear Adi speak this evening and tomorrow afternoon at a gallery talk in the museum at 4 p.m., which kicks off the exhibition Art and Resolution in place from now until mid-April. I hope you will get a chance to visit and see his work and the other work. Adi Nes is an internationally renowned Israeli photographer, well known for his dramatic, large-scale photographs of both real and mythic figures, all based in an Israeli landscape. The figures he draws on for his photographic series are classical and contemporary, drawing together iconic visual and Israeli culture. Such size and resolution are productive of the connections between the scale and the veneer of myths, with their profound impact on history, politics, and culture. About his 212 series, The Village, from which there are several photographs on display now in the exhibition in the Bowdoin College Museum of Art, Adi has said, "The village is a metaphor for Israel, a small place that was built after a tragedy. There is an external beauty, but at the same time, under the surface, there is something dark and not quiet." This unquiet haunts all of his images, from the most pastoral found in the village to the urban landscape that is the setting for his biblical stories, where, for instance, Abraham wheels Isaac in a shopping cart to an uncertain fate. The turbulent ground of the contemporary setting conjoins biblical parables of sacrifice with homelessness at home and displacement. Adi Nes came to attention with his Soldier series in the 1990s, perhaps the best known of these photographs being what he calls the Last Supper before going out to battle, where Israeli soldiers are staged in a scene after Leonardo's famous painting of the Last Supper. He has said about the soldiers in the photo that he hoped this would not be their last meal, in a characteristically flat and poignant reference to the vulnerability of such figures, contrary to the roles they must play or emulate of the invincible Jews defending their state. Their state becomes a reference to both the political entity and their bodily condition. The homoeroticism of Adi's work presents not only a counter to the Israeli foundational myth of the muscular Jew, but a counterpart. By restoring their vulnerability to these soldiers, Adi Nes addresses, and at least symbolically, overcomes the clash between gayness and masculinity, and as I see it, he rewrites and writes, in the sense of putting to right, certain historical equations between queerness and Jewishness. And I think tonight we're going to see his remarkable photo of a soldier doing a handstand, which is a feat of inversion. Adi often talks about how his themes and figures are drawn from his own life and experience. Indeed, the multi-layered issues of identity, the title of his talk, may be a particularly fraught arena in Israel and the Middle East, and here. Such issues are rendered visible for us through the resolution of this great work. Please join me in welcoming Adi Nes.
Thank you very much. After this word, maybe it's better that I will shut up, because it's always a problem with artists that speak about their own works. Good evening. Thank you very much for having me here. If we can a little bit turn off the light, so I will be less embarrassed. It's always a problem for an artist to speak about his work. Most of the artists feel uncomfortable to do so, and I'm not an exception. I think it happened because my art, as any art, composed of many layers. And the beautiful thing in art is that everyone can look at the image and can understand it in a different way. Not by accident, during the years, I always chose to give my exhibitions silly titles like Adi Nes Photographs, Adi Nes Recent Photographs, Adi Nes New Photographs. And all of my pictures are always untitled. This is, for example, untitled 1999, and the same name like the next image, but everyone calls this The Last Supper. So sometimes the sophisticated artist wants to leave his work untitled, but the viewer gives his own title to the work. And I feel it's okay, because as long as the viewer gave the title to the work and not me, it's okay. I find it difficult to title my works because I feel that if I will give a name for the picture, it will lead you into a specific place, and my attitude is to leave everything open for the viewer. But today I want to change my habit and to give you a kind of formula. In art we don't have a formula, but let's say to give you the way that I personally read my own images. I want to break my own images to all the layers that they are composed from, and then at the end of this presentation you can take this formula and compose all of these layers into a new picture, but now it would be your own. But before we start, please let me introduce myself. I was born 50 years ago in a small development town. By the way, this is not me in the picture, all these people think. This is one of the pictures that I've done in my graduate project in the Bezalel Academy of Art and Design, where I studied photography. I was born 50 years ago in a small development town in the south of Israel, in Kiryat Gat. My parents immigrated to Israel from Iran. I'm Iranian from both sides, Iran and Kurdistan. And after I served 3 years as an air traffic controller at the Israeli Air Force, I studied photography at the Bezalel Academy of Art and Design in Jerusalem. And for many years I worked in the television and cinema industry, and some of the added values that came to my art came from what I've done for a living. During the 20 years I've been engaged to art, I've done 5 major series of photographs, and they have a lot in common, as you can see. Usually I start to make art from the point of who I am. Since I'm a man and I'm an Israeli, I deal in my art with masculinity and Israeliness. I've done the Soldier series between 1994 to 2000. It took me 6 years to complete a series of 22 images, so you can understand how slowly I'm working in the style of staging photography. Why soldiers? There have been many reasons. One of them was that I've done this series when Israel was still in Lebanon. The war in Lebanon started when I was 18. Some of the people who died there I was familiar to. And after 18 years, I felt that we forgot the soldiers as Lebanonian mad, and I wanted to bring them back to the front stage. That was one of the reasons why soldiers. After I completed the Soldier series, I won the Gottesdiener Prize of the Tel Aviv Museum of Art. And now I had a budget and invitation to show my art the next year at the Tel Aviv Museum of Art. And I created the boy series of photographs. Since I knew that it's going to be a museum show, I decided to give a space on the museum wall for people that are not deserved that their portrait would be on the museum wall. So I decided to go back to my hometown, to the periphery, and to reenact stories from the Greek mythology with people that I know and familiar to. So that was the boy series, and the framework was stories from Greek mythology. Usually I choose myself a framework when I start to work on new series of photographs. 3 years later, this is also a picture from the boy series photograph. Here you can see Narcissus, the boy who is reflecting his own image. You can meet in this series the death of Adonis and the rape of Dionysus and many other heroes. 3 years later, I was commissioned by the Vogue for Men magazine, Vogue Home International, to participate in the September issue of the magazine. And because of the 9/11, the idea of the editor was to dedicate the magazine for the identity, masculine identity in the Middle East. And on the same time, I've got an invitation from the Legion of Honor Museum in San Francisco to show there a big exhibition, large exhibition. And I also won the Constantiner Prize for photography of the Tel Aviv Museum of Art, and I decided to do the project for the Vogue, but under the idea that it's going to be also an art exhibition. And then I created the Prisoner series of photographs. The request from the Vogue editor was to dress all the models with brand name clothes from the designers' showrooms from Paris and New York. And I felt that in my reality in Israel in those days, with the economic recession, with the Palestinian Intifada, I felt that I can't show the fashion glamorous and not connected to my own life. I decided to do the opposite. Instead of dressing professional models with brand name clothes, I decided to fill the brand name clothes with real people. It's a different state of mind, and that's how I came into the idea to create the Prisoners series. 5 years passed, and another series of photographs came to life. It was a biblical story series. Maybe later I will show you more of this series. Now the protagonists turn to be the homeless people, the street people, people who find themselves in the margin of life, who question their identity. Usually I deal with issues of identity in my art. The biblical story is composed of 14 images, and it took me 5 years to complete it. And more 5 years passed, and I came out with the last years that I've done so far, the Village series. To work 5 years on a project, it's mean 5 years to go, for example, with the biblical stories, to dirty locations, to meet ugly people, low life. And after I finished with the biblical stories, I felt that I have enough from low life, and I want to start something new, very vital. That days, my daughter also was born. I wanted to start a project from good things and not from bad, from high level, from high point and not from low point. And I decided that the next project would have green and blue sky, and I will show the life from a kibbutz or moshav in Israel, from a village, a very, very vital village. The village would be a metaphor for Israel, a small place. The fields in this place are green, the sky is bright and blue, the people are handsome, the trees are fruitful. But since the village is a metaphor for Israel, it's built after a tragedy. There is something between the trees in this village, some secrets. And in the project, I don't say what is a tragedy. Maybe it's a Holocaust. Maybe it's a tragedy of another nation. Maybe it's a secret that the people from the village had. And to show the tragedy, I used elements from Greek tragedies. Usually, every project that I'm doing has some inspiration. I started with the village project. With the inspiration of the village project was the painting of Broiches, the Fall of Icarus. In this painting, you can see the farmer walk his land, and over the shoulder, Icarus is falling down to the ocean. And I thought that this is Israel in a way. On one hand, we grab the hard land with terror attacks every few years, with wars, with economic problems. We grab the hard land, we walk on the land, but over our shoulder, always the dramatic moment happened, the art, the cultural life, something beyond life. It's always on the same lines. And to show there, I decided that people from the village would live two different lives. The life that they live under the sun, they're walking the land, and the life that they live in the attics, in the basement, suddenly all of the fears getting free. And to show the tragedy that exists in this village, I used elements from Greek tragedies like the male goat. Usually when in the history of Greek, when the ancient Greeks sang the tragedies, they sacrificed a goat. So here is the male goat, the ram of the village. And in the village there is also the blind seer, the one who knows the truth. But everyone reacts to the truth in a different way, because this is the Middle East. There is no one truth. This is postmodernism. One of them is admire him, another one is argue with him, a third one is cynic to what he's saying. The blind seer from the Greek mythology, and the village choir tend to be the Greek chorus. And there are also tragic heroes and tragic moments, like the moment the soldiers tell the bad news to the mother that her child is not going to come back from the war. Another beginning for the village series was the book of Nietzsche, the Birth of the Tragedy. And I read it again, and then he writes that the art starts from meeting of opposites, meeting between the idols Dionysus represent the craziness, the passion, and the idols Apollo represent the clear thought and the rationalism. And again, I felt that the people from the village have to live two different lives. In the attics, suddenly all of their fears getting free. Usually in the history of art, the bats represent the fears, the dirty sexuality. All the atmosphere is very homoerotic, and not by an accident. And when the first pioneers came into Israel and settled down at the Jezreel Valley, they drained the marsh. And in this village, suddenly the water, all the things that they denied all the years, the secrets that they denied, suddenly the water are coming up from the ground. And this is the moment of the hero that is getting down to Hades, and he meets the three goddesses of faith. One of them would measure the line of life, and another one would cut it when she decided. I thought that the village does not represent only a kibbutz or a moshav in either. It's not a local story, because my exhibition is going to be shown in Paris and New York. I have a gallery who present my art in Paris. I have a gallery in New York, and usually all of the exhibitions found themselves in different venues all over the world. And I thought that the story that I'm telling about the village is not local, because old farmers behave the same all over the world. It doesn't really matter if it's in the south of France or in America. That's why I merged this image into the American Gothic by Grant Wood. And sometimes I'm walking with the emptiness. Instead of taking the picture next to the building, I decided to take it between the trees, that the perspective would create the same structure. The people from the village mark lines that surround them, a border or frontier, and everything behind this line is bad and evil. But they shoot off nothing. There is no enemy anymore. But the line is not just separates them from the bad things, the line also contains them. They need an enemy to be a community in a way. And for many times people ask me why it takes so many years to complete a series of photographs, a specific photograph. Because when, for example, this image, when I wanted when I found this location, it was in the winter, and I thought that it tells a different story about the village if the trees are naked or if they are growing or if they are green. It's like the way people understand the painting of kids. They give them to paint a tree, and they can understand the nature of the kid by looking at the tree drawn. That's why it takes time, because sometimes I'm waiting for the specific time of the year to take the picture. It's a privilege of an artist. The first pictures that I've done in the village series was this image, and it looked like it came out from my boy series of photographs that I've done in 2000, the dark-skinned boys. And it's not by an accident, because when I studied the village series, I thought that I'm not a villager. I grown up in a development town. These towns were built during the 50s, when the high waves of immigrants came to Israel from all over the world, especially from the Arab countries. And this city was built to establish all of these people. And for many years, the ethos of the Zionism was the Jews, the Ashkenazi Jews. The narratives of the Zionism was to be masculine, to be white skin, blue eyes, blonde hair. And for me, for someone who grown up in a development town, we always admire the kids who came from the moshav, from the kibbutzim and moshavim that surround our town, and we want to be like them. This boy, passed the trees of the orchard, usually in the Jewish culture. The orchard means multi-layered, the place of secrets, of many layers. And these kids passed all the trees of the orchard, and they look at the villagers, the boys of the village, and he want to be like them, to dress the same uniform, the same blue uniforms like them. But all of them want to be like him, because just after I grown up, I realized that all the kids from the kibbutzim that studied with me in school, they wanted to be like us. They wanted to live in the city, and everyone want to be like the other. The narrative of Zionism was to create the new Jew, very different than the weak Jew from the diaspora. He can ride a bareback horse and be close to the nature, and that's why I combine it with the picture of Picasso, the boy and the horse, the merge between the boy and the horse. They turn to be one person, one animal in a way, merge between maybe the virgin and the unicorn. And not by an accident, I chose this location, the orchard with the grapefruit, because it's bitter. It's not the symbol of Israel was for many years the orange, the Jaffa orange. Now it's turned to be a bitter grapefruit. Many times in my art, to create the dramatic moments, the conflict, I confront things from different. I'm trying to create a picture that deal with meeting of opposites. For example, it can happen with the, for example, in this picture, usually the ancient goat, the ancient Greeks sacrificed the goat. Now the horn of the horn of the goat turned to be like a weapon. The young guy pushed the old man by holding the horn of the male goat. And I thought about the passive aggressiveness in our reality. Are we more victims of the history or aggressive in a way? And also happened here, because this is not just the moment that the soldiers tell the bad news to the mother, it's also the classical annunciation. It's a moment that the angel tells Mary that from her womb Christ is going to come out. And the same moment, the moments that life begins, is the same moment, especially in Israel. I think every father that informed that he's going to have a boy think about the moments that he would have to send his child to the army. The moment that life begins, the potential of death might come. The clock start to tick. Usually I'm not taking pictures of professional models or professional actors, but I'm not taking also real people. I'm looking for extras. For example, this picture was all cast by Facebook. I have 5,000 friends in Facebook, and I just, had something in mind. I looked for the specific face. I asked them, and they agreed to pose to me. I was very happy with that. This is my own Icarus. Again, you can see the how am I working with light, the warm light over there, surrounded by cold light, flashlight, and also materials. How I worked with the mattress here to create a kind of a wing to this angel. I waited 3 months for a turkey to die because I never kill. It's stuffed animal. It's not a real animal. That's why you stare at the camera. But I will never kill an animal for the purpose of the shooting. So I waited for a chicken to die, and I couldn't take animal. Dying animal from there because his friend checked him, and all the shape of the turkey is different. So I had to wait until he will be sick and die, and that's why it takes time from time to time to take pictures. That was the last pictures in the village series. The eclipse, and something that I thought about modern life. In modern life, and especially now, we see it in politics, but in Israel, I experienced it, and I noticed it before, that even the sun is not at the same place anymore. The idols are changing. The good and bad, the attitude, everything is changing, and we are trying to fight the changing of the world, the changing of nature, the changing of human behavior, but we can't, because it's stronger and bigger than us. And what is being left after the crisis is only the small unit of a man, a woman, or maybe 2 men and a baby, and grandmother and grandfather, the small family unit. This is the only thing that's being left that can hold us together, give us some strength in the time that the sun is not the same anymore. Please follow me now to the way how did I work with the biblical stories series. The biblical stories series, which came before the village series, started from a crisis I experienced. Like every man at the age of 40 or 45, suddenly I felt like my life broke apart. For many years I told you that I worked for the television and cinema industry. Suddenly one day I found myself unemployed, fired from my job. On the same time, I broke up relationship from my boyfriend after many years together. I was alone in the world, without money, without a job, without career, without apartment, without a partner. And I asked myself, why do I choose to live and work in Israel? I can easily move to the States. I have a gallery in New York. I can have a visa artist. I can move to Paris also. I have a gallery there. But I felt that I can't, because I deal with Israeliness, and I can't take images of Israeliness out of Israel. And as long as I look around me at people at my age, Israeli people at my age, I found that Israel is getting through a very deep identity crisis. People at my age try to achieve their Polish passport of the grandmother because they want to have permission to work in the EU or to study there. People at my age try to participate in the American visa lottery because they wanted the green card. And I thought, what is the spinal column of the Israeli society, the root of the Israeli society that holds us in the Holy Land? And what is the root of my identity? Why I can't move to the States or to Europe? Because I work from the Hebrew. The Hebrew is the main root of my identity. I can't work in different language. This is my visual language, not just my verbal language. And when I thought about Israel, I thought maybe the Bible is the spinal column of the Israeli society, and everyone else surrounds this root. That's how the Bible came into the next years of photographs. And since I was a kind of homeless, I decided that now the protagonist would be the homeless people, street people, people who find themselves in the margin of life. And I decided of this location because I looked for a metaphor for Israel again. Usually in the movies, in the time of catastrophe, Armageddon, if you're familiar with the movie 28 Days Later, all the city is empty and all the garbage rolls to the fence. That's why I chose this location. And whenever I start a new project, I'm starting with the research, and I went back to the history of art, and I found that the old masters usually show the biblical heroes in agricultural light, because that was the time. And I decided that my biblical stories project is going to be very urban. It's the Bible, biblical stories that happen now in today's world. And I looked for a way, how can I bring the nature or the fields into the town? And one of the solutions was to take one of the picture next to the vegetable market, because this is the appearance of the nature in town. We left a group of the hair of the young lady free, and because of the wind, it touched the body of the old lady, and suddenly the sentence from the Bible comes to our mind. What Ruth said to Naomi, wherever you go, I go, said Ruth to Naomi, your God is my God, your people are my people. When I studied the biblical story series, I had few challenges to solve. One of them was that I had to choose who's going to be in the project and who's not. The Bible full with great heroes, and I can't keep this project forever. And since the Bible, the biblical writer do not give us a lot of information, Cain killed Abel, why we have to assume it by ourselves. It's not like the Greek mythology. If you read the Greek mythology, you know exactly how did the God look like, what he liked to eat and dress. You read the Bible, there are not a lot of information. That's why I decided that whenever I will choose a protagonist, he will be someone who is known enough. Everyone knows King David. These are David and Jonathan. Everyone knows King David was handsome. No one knows how King Ahab looked like. Everyone knows Elijah has a white beard. No one knows how Prophet Malachi looks like. So that was the first decision, that whenever I will choose a protagonist, he will be someone who is known enough. Another decision was that since I deal with the crisis, with the homelessness, whenever I will choose a hero, a protagonist, he will be someone who had some issue with his home. David, who had to run away from the palace. Ruth and Naomi, who left one home and seek for another home. Abraham and Isaac, Abraham who left his father's land. And Hagar, who was thrown away from Abraham's house. Joseph, who was sold by his brother with a strip of penny colors. This is the only optimistic picture in the series because he is still a child, he's a dreamer, so the sky above him is still blue. And Job, who was the ultimate homeless, who lost everything, his property and kids and wife. And the third challenge I had is to choose the point of the story. Usually in the Jewish history of art, the artist shows the high point of the story. And I decided that since I'm working with the crisis, whenever I choose the point of the story, it would be the low point of the story. I will not show David in the palace. I will show David in a different point of the story when he was a leader of a group of bandits. He was a kind of criminal. I will not show Noah in the ark. I will show Noah when he was drunken and naked. And the city in this project is very hard for the people who live there. You want to get service, but there is no one to serve you. It's all automatic machine. Again, you can see how can I create the dramatic moment, the warm body on the cold floor, the warm colors of the machines surrounded with cold neon fluorescent light, the history of art in today's world, and also the composition. It looks like a snapshot, but I took this picture in large format camera. It's all opposites that create a dramatic moment. One of the people who answered the ad to be Noah was this person. And he got into the audition room very uncomfortable, very nervous. And I asked him, what's the matter, Nikolai? And he said, I want the job, but I feel uncomfortable to undress now. I promise you that on set it will be okay, but now in the audition I feel uncomfortable. I told him, you know, Nikolai, the moment you got into the room, I decided that you are going to be Abraham and not Noah. So Abraham in my picture is going to be dressed so you can be relaxed. And he said, no, I refuse. I said, what do you mean? He said, no, I came to be Noah. I want to be only Noah. I think, why, Nikolai? You say that you, in Hebrew, it's work better. You don't Noah to be Noah, uncomfortable to be Noah. And Abraham is going to be dressed, and he insists that he came to be only Noah. And then I lost my patience. I told him, you know, Nikolai, I want you to be Noah. This is just a movie, just a picture. You're not going to be, it's a theater. You're not going to be a real Noah or a real Abraham. It's just you're yourself. I'm just taking a picture of you. And he refused. I asked him, please give me the reason, because I want you to be Abraham, and otherwise I will not shoot you. He said, no, you probably pay more to the naked models than the dressed one. If you will promise me you will pay us the same, I agree to be Abraham. And of course, I paid him the same. And why I wanted him to be Abraham, because of the research I'm doing, all the images goes with me wherever I go. And the moment he got into the room, I saw in front of my eyes Abraham and Isaac by Caravaggio. Look how much these people are the same. It's almost the same feature. But in my pictures, I will never show the decisive moment like Caravaggio show Abraham with a knife, or like Rembrandt show the angel touch Abraham and the knife is falling down. I will always go to the triumphal moment when Abraham got down from the Moriah mountain after the binding, and Isaac suddenly disappeared from the story. And I decided to make a midrash to understand what happened to Isaac, where he disappeared from the story when Abraham got down after the binding, after the sacrifice of Isaac from the Moriah mountain. And I thought maybe he slept after the trauma his father passed him. This is behind the scene. I took this image around 5 a.m. We waited for the first sunrise to come, because I wanted the sun to touch the building over there, that I will have a white spot in the back of the picture. And we used the photographer's I think it was cinematic light. Usually I'm working with cinematic light, not with the photographer's flash. We used the light to repeat to create the light. Usually every project has a light concept, and the light concept of the biblical story series was hard light that touched the protagonist, and it's like a spiritual moment, a spiritual light that touch the protagonist. Let's see, before I finish, a short video of behind the scene, and you will get more impression of how am I walking. It's Hebrew, so I will translate you what you see. You see, they are not real homeless people, but it's real people we chose, we dress them, so we have the freedom to raise their sweater. Everyone was very tired on set. The boy came from the north of Israel. I'm asking the makeup girl to move a little bit the wood because I wanted the viewer to understand that it's happened after the binding and not before. Impose him. He knows that he's going to be, he saw the draft, so he knows he should be barefoot, so we ask about his shoot. Usually I'm taking large format pictures. Now it was Hasselblad, medium format. Everyone was very tired because during the night we took Noach. Look how many equipment we bring to the set. I didn't have enough separation between the protagonist and the background, so I decided to dress him with the black coat. I'm trying to walk with them, but something doesn't work. Not just during the audition, he was very nervous. Also on set, he wasn't a professional actor. He didn't know how to act. I tried to relax him, to massage him, to talk to him. Nothing worked. He was like a statue, like a stone on set, and I didn't know what to do. And I remind you, I walked against the clock because I knew that the moment the sun would come up, all the light concept of the picture is going to crash. I am telling him all of your life is over your shoulder. Nothing worked. Suddenly I had an idea. Usually this is something that I'm doing. Because I'm doing a research and interview with the actors, I brought him back to the points that he knew from his own life. I started to walk with him slowly, because he told me that he collects bottles for recycling, and I brought him back to be himself on set. Now, when he will return, and took a lot of time, my crew, my people were crazy because they know that we are in a rush, but I couldn't expose my pressure to him. I told him, let's go slowly, and get here and push the shopping cart very slow. We prepared Joseph here for the next shooting. And when everything is ready, the decisive moment is very easy. One of the images I paid tribute when I created Abraham and Isaac was the supermarket shopper by Dion Hanson, because I wanted to show the big gap that Israel went through the time that I was a kid in Kiryat Gat, that the gap between rich and poor was very small. To today's words, that the gap between rich and poor in Israel and all over the world, like all of the Western societies, is very large, that people have to make a living from things that other people acquired. I thought about recycling of narratives, about the narrative of the sacrifice of Isaac, about today in Israel, that every father has to send his child back to the army, and you think about sacrifice of Isaac, and many hints to Caravaggio. You can see the dirty barefoot. We worked with very Israeli materials like the nylon plastic bags that every Israeli has under the sink. We put them one into the other to create a kind of a painter palette. Again, the light concept. In all the series, I decided to create a light that repeats the way Genesis is written, like a theater play. There is a protagonist and a background. That's why you will see in most of the pictures the line contour and the hard and the backlight, and sometimes the light touch the protagonist in a kind of spiritual moment. I want to finish with the picture of Hagar. Hagar, if you don't remember, was Abraham's concubine since Sarah couldn't be pregnant, Abraham took a second wife. And there are two stories about Hagar. In one of them, she was pregnant, and Sarah made her a very hard life. And she ran away to the desert. Suddenly an angel of God appeared and told her to go back home because her child is going to be a father of great nation, and she did it. Another story about Hagar: after Ismail was born and after Isaac was born, Sarah asked Abraham to send her back to her fatherland. He didn't give them enough food and water. The boy was dying. She put him under the tree and she sat far from him. And this is the moment that I connected to. And how do you know it? Because now when you understand how am I walking, you can easily recognize that this image paid tribute to the migrant mother by Dorothea Lang. And the eye looked for the kids, but the kids are not here because Ismail is under the tree over there. And I gave this speech a few years ago in a Jewish conference in Limud in Nottingham. And a rabbi asked to remark something. I gave him permission. He said, I think you are wrong. I said, what do you mean? He said, you're wrong. This is not the moment when Ismail was under the tree. This is the moment when Hagar was pregnant. I asked him, how do you know it? He said, you see. I asked him, you see what? He said, you see, she's pregnant. I told him, she's not pregnant. You know, it's maybe you didn't understand me. It's a stage photography. She wasn't pregnant. I know this lady. She's a good friend of mine. She wasn't pregnant. And he insists that she's pregnant. I told him, you know, she's a very good-looking girl. She will be very disappointed to hear that you think she's fat. I didn't try to pretend she's pregnant. How do you know it? He said, you see. I asked him, how do you see it? He said, because on the wall behind her, there is a kind of an ultrasound image of an embryo. And from that, you understand that she's pregnant. And this photograph is in my studio for many years, and from that moment I can see only the embryo on the wall. I can't see the lady anymore. And you can understand that sometimes it doesn't really matter what the artist has to say about his work. It's much more interesting what the viewer see. So thank you very much, and it's time for questions if you still have. Thank you. Yes, please.
Did you ever, when you first started thinking that you were an artist, were there ever other ways to express yourself?
First of all, it's happened by mistake, like everything in life. I was artistic. I was artistic when I was a child, and I served in the army, and I painted on the blanket, and I was punished, and you know everything happened in the wrong way. And then I finished my army service, and I wanted to study something that deal with art, but I thought about something that I can make a living from. I thought about graphic design or industrial design, and I got into a Bezalel Academy of Art and Design, and I looked at the booklet, and everything was fascinating. I wanted to study everything, and I had to choose. And by mistake, I marked the box of the photography department. I didn't remember it, just I got an invitation for an interview in the photography department. I had no portfolio of photographs, so I brought my drawings with me, and I was surprised that they accepted me. And those days, photography department was very, very trendy. And after a few years, I was brave enough to ask my teachers, why did you chose me? You know, everyone wanted to study photography in those days. And said, you know, all the Israeli youngsters came after their army service with the same portfolio of Indian women in the field of rice from the long trip they took after the army service. And you came, a strange beard with drawing instead of photographs, you thought to yourself, we will accept one of this kind of students, we will see what happened, because photography is just a technique. We can teach you to be a photographer, but talent is something that's hard to catch. So that's how I studied my way in photography. And I think the history of art, the things that I was connected to, always there. But I never took a decision that I will be an artist. It just happened.
Sorry, I'm too tall for that. Well, first of all, thank you so much. As a queer American Jew, I really appreciate the thoughtful way you explore those identities. And second, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how, I think that in contemporary photography, I think one of the most important things in this country is centering black and brown photographers and centering how they tell their own stories. And so I'm curious, how you, in your work, how you think that you do that in centering Palestinian stories that are marginalized by the occupation, and how you kind of empower them to tell their own stories. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, I have two different answers. First of all, my art represents myself and not my country. So in a way, my art is very personal. All the layers that exist in my art exist in myself. Maybe because I'm a man, I deal with masculinity. Because I'm Israeli, I deal with Israeliness. Because I'm gay, I deal with homoeroticism, maybe, and masculinity. I grown up in the periphery, so I deal with center and periphery. I'm from a Sephardic background, so I deal with ethnic issues. I'm a Jew, so I pay tribute to Judaism. I'm an artist, so I pay tribute to history of art. All the layers that exist in my personality exist in my art and reflected there, but there is no one voice that cover, or one color that cover everything. The different things can live together, and I can't be someone else. I create from the point of who I am, and everything is personal. That's why a few years ago, someone asked me if I ever took a self-portrait of myself, and I answered that all of them are kind of multiple self-portrait, because all of them represent me, and when I choose a protagonist, he has something that exists in me in a way. I dealt with the political issues in Israel. In the Middle East, you can't ignore politics. If you will ignore the politics, it will run after you, and this is a statement to ignore. I dealt with the issue that you appeared in a different way, in an artistic way, in the personal way. And I want maybe to give you example from the end of this presentation. I didn't give this part because of the time, the short time, but I want to show you how it's working. For example, this image came from the soldier series. Maybe if we can a little bit turn off the light. This image is part of the soldiers series, and I think every American Jew from a specific vintage can easily recognize that this image pays tribute to a well-known icon from the Israeli history of art. This is the cover of the Life magazine from the last day of the Six-Day War. The photographer of the Life magazine catched this soldier with Kalashnikov, the weapon that he took from the enemy. It portrays the great victory of the Jews, of the Israelis. He represents all the Israelis. They are handsome. They are, the ocean is blue. The sky is blue, and the future is also bright and blue. And what I've done 20 years later, I tried to show the same image, but the water are not blue anymore, because the occupation brought not only good things but also bad things. Now there are aggressive waves in the water, and all the tips of the water hurt the skin, and they are not fighting, they are frightening. I took this picture in very cold water in the Golan Heights, and they were freezing. If you will look at the print, their skin look almost blue. And he's not alone. He's surrounded by very aggressive soldiers. This is, by the way, behind the scene of this image. You can see how am I walking. It's 1999. Since I worked for the television industry, I took, without any permission, I must admit, lightning from the television, and I worked with them on set. This image I told you about the community that surrounds itself with a border, with a frontier, because they are looking for an enemy to be a community, to find something that connects them to each other. But this image paid tribute to an image that I've done 10 years before from the Soldier series. The Soldier series has two parts. The first part of the Soldier series was, the framework was a kind of, imagine a circus where all the participants in this circus are only soldiers. That's how in the first picture of the Soldier series you can see the army tent look like a circus tent. You can see the strong men from the circus, the clapping audience, the behind the scene, and many other images. And then I got into a point of the series that I wanted to take pictures of soldiers. And for me, the soldiers wasn't an Israeli soldier. It was just a metaphor for human being. It wasn't, it's not documentary, it's all staged. That's why you can't see the IDF logo on their uniforms. And I got into the moment that I wanted to take pictures of soldiers, but I had no idea where I'm going to now, because I didn't want anymore the circus. So I decided to take episodes of men who are looking for intimacy in places that there is no intimacy there. And since I was stuck, I asked myself, what does a painter do when he stands in front of the white canvas? Where does he put the first line on the canvas? And this is how this picture started, from a line in the surface. But it's not just a line, it's a line of urinating soldiers. I told you that the soldier series started from because of the war in Lebanon. The war in Lebanon started when Ariel Sharon, the general, promised Menachem Begin, the prime minister, that he will get into Lebanon only for 40 kilometers, and then we will start in Lebanon for 18 years. And here I asked something about occupation. We're all familiar with the nature of animals, dogs, for example, who mark their territory by pissing. So it's not just a line in the surface, it's also a line of urinating soldiers who mark the territory from their masculinity in a way. So the few layers exist on the same time. Something from the painting, composition, line on the surface, and so on. Something from politics, something from the narrative of the project. It tells a new story, because since I'm an artist and not a filmmaker, for example, I have no obligation for the story. I can give the viewer only elements that each time he will go to the picture, he can build himself a different story. And of course, the homoticism that exists in this picture also. Or this picture from the Prisoner series. Again, it started from the request of the Vogue to participate in the September issue of the magazine that the editor decided to dedicate it for the identity, masculine identity in the Middle East, and except me, it chose 6 photographers from the Middle East: a Palestinian photographer, Egyptian, someone from Istanbul, Tehran, and Kuwait, and so on. And I created the Prisoners series. In those days, Israel started to talk about the wall, but the wall wasn't exist yet. So I decided to take one of the pictures next to the wall, but since there was no wall yet, I decided to take a different wall and just to add Barbara friends on top of the wall. And I showed the models walk on the catwalk like prisoners walking in the prison yard. That was another picture from the Vogue series, and in the magazine it appeared with subtitles. The Palestinian boy wear a Louis Vuitton coat and the Vivienne Westwood switcher, and the Israeli policeman with American Ray-Ban. And when I created this picture, I thought about a sentence from the song of Peter Gabriel, Biko. You can blow out a candle, but you can't blow out a fire. Once the wind would flow, the light would come up, something like that. So that's what I try to express, that the confrontation between Israel and Palestine is much more than just a political thing. The last picture in the prisoner series was this dog. For me, it represents, in a way, Kervos, the dog in the front of Hades in the Greek mythology, that would smile to everyone who want to get down to Hades, but will bite with his 3 heads everyone who want to go out from hell. And when I sent the project to the editor of the Vogue, he was very happy with the project, but suddenly, after a few days, he got back to me with emails that one of the person in the staff of the magazine want to take out this picture because he feels that it's not right. The Palestinian photographer showed attacked dog with the barbed wire fence because it's Holocaust overtone. And I answered, it's not the Palestinian photographer that's showing it, it's me. I'm the Israeli photographer. So please tell him that the Israeli photographer decided to show it. And I decided to show this dog like this because I thought about what happened before what. Are we a result of our history? Are we behave like that because of the Holocaust, which is in the back of our mind all the time? Or are we attacked dog with broken, old attacked dog with broken teeth? Are we more aggressive or more passive, like what's happening in this picture? And more you can see the politics and my statement, political statement, between the picture, under the lines, under the surface. And it's not, my pictures are personal. It's art. It's not propaganda. I don't try to appear political ideas, but on the same time, I am a political man, so I have some statement. Full answer? Thank you.
I'm going to try to ask this because I think you might have already addressed it a little bit. Yes. But I have a friend who's a painter, and he tells me that if Rembrandt were alive now, he'd be making movies. And so I guess my question kind of comes from a little bit of the fact that, and like I said, you kind of already addressed this a little bit, but you use the tools of cinema, and you really come into it in a collaborative and highly sort of scripted and intentional way. And I wonder, what is it about the still photograph that you are drawn to as the primary mode? And you mentioned that it's about like letting people make up their own stories around the pictures, but I also hear you really being forceful and insistent upon what the story is behind that picture. And so I'm wondering, what is it about the photograph itself that brings you to that?
Maybe I prefer to make one single photograph in the budget of a cinema than a movie in the budget of a still photograph. And I must admit that I'm touched. Now I'm thinking about to move the images, to make, maybe I don't like the video art, but maybe to make a video. I'm trying in my photographs to have all the story in a specific moment, in a specific frame, to create a very condensed frame. And I feel that if I will make a short episode, then it will be only the narrative, only the story, only the viewer would not have all the layers. He can't, even in today's world, you know, when the viewer has a lot of patience, they look at it's a challenge. How do you trap the viewer for more than 1 second in front of the picture? And when I'm creating a multi-layered image that hold all the movie in one frame, I can hold the viewer for a little bit more than just creating a snapshot in a way. But I must admit that now, in these days, I found it's very difficult to make photographs. The medium has changed very dramatically. From all of the points, the beginning of how do you create a picture, it's not just the camera anymore. You can trap an image by many different devices. You can scan the image, you can record an image, you can do many different things. And also the end of the process. You don't have now just to print the image. You can use the 3D printer. You can screen the image. You can transform the image to be a voice or something else. And also the scene. Where do you show images? Art photographs. They are not just the galleries anymore and the museums. Now the scene moved to the social media networks, to the internet. The patience of the viewer are very short. And as an artist, that photography was his tool. Suddenly I found that I'm in a crisis because I don't have a beginning, I don't have an end, I don't have a place where I'm standing. I only have the talent to catch something, to catch something, and to do something else with it. And then when I started the new project after the village, I started with the idea to work with images that happened in our mind, and to trap them in a way, and to create an image that didn't use a camera, just use some electrodes to catch the brain waves. I started a project with Hebrew University for 1 year, and it didn't went well. You know, this technology does not exist yet, so I decided to wait a little bit, and I started to make a short movie, a short video. I got into the point where everything was ready for the shooting, the storyboards, the actors, the budget, everything was ready. And a day before the shooting, I decided that I cancel everything, and I'm getting backward because I felt that when I'm making a movie, I have no control of everything. I have free control. I need a control of all the details. And suddenly when I'm making a movie, there are many people with me on the same level. I have to listen to them. I don't accept them. I want to argue with them. I know exactly what should be, but they said me, no, we are the professional. We know how it should be. So I decided now to go backward and to create another maybe photography series for the next time I'll be here. Well, thank you very much. I hope you will enjoy the show.